time for another draft physics video presentation. Pretty sure it's recording. Alright, so this one is going to be a bit off subject maybe. Might get into some philosophy stuff or something, I don't know. It's a little bit of a gray danger area. Yeah, it just approaches how the world should function. I guess I should point out first, of course, that Google is evil. Yeah, so let me not forget my obligations. Just so many things. Again, we're allowing this company to run the internet who, we see what it does with YouTube, basically promoting content it approves of and all of that. And it's doing it with the internet also, in terms of partnering with, even providing you the weather and different things. So instead of taking you to a website, it now brings a piece of the website to you, kind of crap. And it's promoting content. It isn't providing you an index, a search mechanism. It's providing you with, this is what Google likes. So much of that anyway. And this is just not the way the internet should have been controlled and indexed. It should be meeting higher standards of integrity and lack of bias and self-interest and all of the rest of that. And to eliminate all of those balances against corruption was really a gigantic mistake. The human race giving away this basic infrastructure to corporations is really not wise. So anyway, then Baldy Catz and the shill types, these fake smart people, and they're fake smart people. Like I say, they have a little knowledge, but they're not capable of constructing reasoned arguments. And well, let's not say they're not capable. They're not interested. And leaving it at that, they just want to mock and humiliate people, and that's the big fun. So this is just watching fail videos. It's failure in itself, right? I mean, you're kind of a failure if your entertainment is watching failure. It's pretty pitiful. And so it's sort of the lowest of the low, in terms of this whole idea of being so stupid they can't figure out how stupid they are, and or how hypocritical and duplicitous their critiques are, because they are so guilty of the same crimes often. Their own faith-based perceptions of reality. So that'll bring me to a Andy Clark video I'll play some of. A person from the past, not highly relevant, but somebody talking anyway. I mean, people are entitled to their opinions, and I'm entitled to critique what I see in the opinions as being just absolute crap. That's our job, frankly, is to honestly share our observations. Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, so they made a simple request to Baldy Catz to just undo this, what I feel is it's a real crime against me as a person, and against his integrity. I mean, he's just demonstrated he doesn't have any. Because everything appears to be just excuse-making, scapegoating. He's used a bullshit excuse to weasel out of an obligation he made. And so we should just demonstrate that, no, he didn't really do that, by demonstrating that if he had to make this, if he had to fulfill his obligation, some portion of his obligation, he could at the minimum just provide a link to a demonstration or analysis of the two-slit experiment that he believes is accurate and completely consistent with wave theory. Mechanically sound, logically sound and factually sound, and citing experiments that actually took place, experimental results that actually were observed somewhere, you know. So yeah, and so that's it, just a link, and the fact that the shill crowd can't provide that evidence to disengage my need to point out just how dishonorable these people are. They call people pseudoscience, or they call them anti-science, and call them lots of names, and call them stupid and too wrong kind of thing, and they'll use all kinds of rhetoric and all kinds of cheap talk, but when required to put up, all of a sudden they disappear. You know, when it's time to, you know, demonstrate they have some integrity and that they have the facts on their side, they pussy out. AB science, for example. You know, again, he keeps making these little tiny comments that seem benign enough. Oh, you're wrong. You're just too wrong. Blah 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 blah. But he doesn't put up anything. So anyway, any counter argument demonstrating that you know, the substance of what I'm arguing is incorrect. Anyway, so they're just what they call themselves, shills. They're just fakes and phonies, and you know, it's just too bad that that's the way the world works now. Is that people, like I said, have a little knowledge. It's a dangerous thing, and more importantly, I suppose, is knowledge in the hands of people that don't have any personal integrity is even more dangerous, because then facts can be manipulated and propaganda can be created, and that's what they are, is propagandists. Alright, the other thing to mention is that yes, I am offering $1,500, a pretty substantial hunk of money. I think it's 15. I'm just going to say that number for the fun of it. You know, I'll have to make up the difference, and that's all right. To an account on YouTube that has 100 or more subscribers. I mean, there's other prizes, of course, so you can go find the video. I'll leave a link below to the video. And you know, for somebody to an hour of their time, on a channel with some visibility, for me to have the opportunity to demonstrate that these people who talk like they know the physics and that they know the evidence don't really know the evidence in any real way, because the more you investigate the evidence, the more you see that the evidence is kind of it's more foggy than they imply in terms of what the results are actually saying, certainly what interpretations of the experimental consequences, and that there are valid alternative explanations for the phenomenon, that the causes may not be what they've identified. Even simple things like the cyclotron and the experiments where you're bending a beam of electrons and such, you know, I've seen in doing my research that I'm not finding any conclusive evidence that when they say they have a stream of protons or a stream of electrons, that they actually have that, in fact, and that all they're really doing is manipulating plasmas of ions, and you know, and so they've misinterpreted the function of electrons and protons. They've misidentified their properties because they're really not doing what they think they're doing. But anyway, more to come on that subject, I guess, as I do more and more research and attempt to find any hard evidence that electrons by themselves can be manipulated in such ways. But anyway, another subject. So back to I'll do a couple of comments and move to a couple other things and such. So some guy did ask me a question. Please, 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 sir. I mean, this sounds like just bullshit. Answer my physics question. Please help me. Here it is. Question. So anyway, he posted something on Stack Exchange, and the question is now gone. So he retracted it for whatever reason. And he could have just posted it here, obviously. And it just had to do with, it's mostly just about like gyroscopes, okay, circular momentum, I would argue, and the consequences of some circumstance. I think what he was describing is to say you could have some spinning object, a flat plane, let's say, and then you spun another object inside of that flat plane. What would the consequences be? And, you know, it's all really about bearings. And so this whole gyroscope thing is sort of interesting because I didn't realize there was such... I mean, people find it terribly fascinating. Say if you're holding a bicycle wheel that's spinning and you're in gravity and you sit in a chair that can spin, you know, you can hold the wheel and you'll start turning. Well, of course you'll start turning because there's bearings that are going to be moved by gravity. So that's the whole point of a gyroscope. I guess I don't really need to draw this. I mean, as anything spins, it creates friction on some surface if it's in gravity. And even when it's spinning, say in space, you can sort of understand that the rotation movement is stretching the material to some extent, and that you're going to have some heat. And it's through that process that you're just going to convert the motion from, you know, motion this way to motion in these other directions. And you already know that we're already doing that to some extent. In the universe, we're moving on the surface of the Earth, and then the Earth is moving around the Sun, and then the Sun and the Earth are moving in space, and then the galaxy is moving this way, and then the galaxy can also be, you know, have a velocity in another direction. Lots of velocities, lots of different velocities all add up. And at any one moment, any elemental bit of you is moving in those directions. But the net total will be a certain kind of direction, and that just has to do with what motion has been stored inside of you in the relationship between the matter bits. So because matter bits get in a certain relationship and they have a certain energy moving between them, that energy is in a direction, and for it to change direction, it has to obey certain rules. But it in fact can change direction, and it can change it very efficiently. And that's what we're constantly doing. So we have energy stored inside of us, and that energy has a direction, and that direction can be changed based on moving the bits of matter inside of you. So anyway, yeah, so I mean, other subjects kind of complex even unto itself that we may get to eventually as a subject video. Yeah. Anyway, all right, the other comment. So I'll get rid of the other comment because clearly it doesn't link to anything real anymore, and I don't even know what the purpose of it was anyway. It sounded rather silly. So we'll just remove that. Stop doing that, please. Alright. So this is somebody called Northamptonshire. That's really interesting. Anyway, an angry dude. So, you know, these are people critiquing people for having an attitude or saying things the wrong way or doing something or blah, blah, blah. And then they use trigger words, you know. They again, you know, should we say Einstein dude? Should we end everything Mr. Dude? You know, how far are you going to take this kind of crap? You know, because anybody with any kind of personal integrity, anybody who's not has some sense of their inferiority or something, I don't think is going to be all that happy being called your dude. Okay, so if I want to disrespect you, I'll call you a dude. Okay, it's not a good thing, and it's just kind of funny for somebody to complain about an attitude when they're demonstrating an attitude, you know, and actually using what could be defined as clear trigger words. I mean, words just intended to trigger. So right there, your psychology is exposed. In just 4 words, you exposed your own psychology, asshole. This is the kind of game you play. Okay. pointing out a model of the universe with which he disagrees. So it's not even a very well written sentence, obviously. Pointing out a model. I'm not pointing out their model, I'm pointing out my disagreements with the model and the reasons why I'm disagreeing. That's what I'm illustrating, how it's flawed and how it's propaganda, how it's all poorly evidenced and how it's wooey, okay, really, really silly physics, and it's not healthy for human beings to have silly understanding of the physical universe. They should understand how it really works and understand the implications of that real function. Alright, universe with which he disagrees. Any model, yours included, must build on axioms. So, duh, it has to build on reasoned vocabulary, identifying up and down and left and right and forward and back. Now, yes, so somebody else had to identify that those are really the dimensions, okay, and yes, which way you point doesn't make any difference. There's always 3 perpendicular dimensions from any perspective. So yes, you need some axioms, okay, that's no surprise, idiot. The point is should the axiom be God exists, or there's a thing called bent space, it's there, it's real, it's, should the axiom be that if it's a little bit like, it is like, so seems like is like, should that be the axiom? Anything that looks like something is something. So platypuses are really just ducks that don't fly very well. Alright. Alright. Axioms, because of our incapacity to truly know the universe. So this is another statement. So that's an axiom of yours, apparently. So you've already declared the universe unknowable. We can't know. Water is wet. Or we can't know that gravity's a force, or we can't figure this stuff out. Yeah, we can figure it out. So that's your axiom. I don't think you have any evidence for your axiom. I don't think you have any evidence that the universe is in any way too complicated for us to understand, that the elemental functions are doing some kind of bizarre fancy geometry or something, that they're just doing 2 plus 2 plus 2, frankly. The elemental universe is doing really simple math, and we can understand it. Now, what emerges out of that is a lot of complexity, and we don't need to understand exactly why, the universe creates the image of a piece of toast, or a piece of toast with Mary's picture on it. We can understand why it does. We don't have to understand exactly how each image was constructed, just like this video is made of a bunch of still images in a frame rate. We can understand that. We don't have to actually see every single frame and understand every single difference in every single frame and understand why it looks like a continuous motion because of how slowly our consciousness absorbs the information and therefore turns something that's not happening smoothly into something that looks like it's smooth. And we can understand that. So why do we don't actually need to see every frame. So there's lots of things we can understand in generalizations. Okay, universe, we are bound by it. So another axiom of yours. Yeah, we exist in the universe, and just like all the other pieces of crap in the universe, the carrots and the peas and the broccoli and whatever else is in the soup, can all see the soup. We can see other pieces of broccoli, and we can see things that aren't broccoli, and identify them and label them. And we can do that honestly, or we can do that dishonestly, and that's really part of the argument I'm making here, is that it seems the populist engine creates very dishonest perceptions and definitions of reality, and that they're just replacing one silly religion, dangerously silly, with another dangerously silly religion. Whatever the axioms, well, I guess that's sort of the whole argument, is whatever the axioms is exactly what we're arguing. So we've already argued about two axioms of yours. The universe can't be understood, and somehow because we're in the universe, we can't understand the universe. I think both of those are silly and stupid. There's no evidence to believe the universe gets more complicated as it goes elemental. There's every bit of evidence that gets less complicated. All right, what are these axioms? Those are the truth. Whatever the axioms, those are the truths, but they also are your biases. Hey, look, that's the whole conversation, though. Just recognize you've stated a couple of things to be facts that I would say you don't have evidence to support. The whole argument is what does the evidence support? What does the evidence indicate is our reality? That's what's being argued, asshole. And the only way to have the argument is to have the argument. There's no way to figure out whose axioms are right or which axioms should be believed except to argue in defense of them. I argue, for example, that it is very strange and unusual and weird to all that we know about how the universe functions in terms of all the forces and all the interactions for you to believe that light is bent by gravity. It's not consistent with what everything else appears to be doing. And if your evidence is weak and sloppy, and the fact that you never repeated the experiment, you never did it from space where it's 400 times better resolution, blah, 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 and all your galactic images are all mathematically a mess, that maybe you're believing for bad reason. All right. Or no good reason. That if you had any real integrity, you'd at least admit, wow, the evidence should be a lot better than that. You know, if we're going to say there was a big bang and we're going to say the universe is expanding, we probably should have better evidence than the evidence we're using to argue the point. Because other points, other perspectives can be argued. Is like, for example, the radar experiment, or the two-slit radar experiment, you know, where you're using two independent sources. It clearly can be argued that jamming is a perfectly suitable explanation. No rule required, no entanglement, no superposition, no wave functions, no any of that stuff. Just a simple consequence of the limitation of our receiving capacity. Our receivers are jammable. That math is exactly the same. It's just as viable an explanation. So why should I believe your story? All right. Those are your truths, but they are also your biases. Yes, and the whole argument is about that very subject. About finding out, revealing biases. That's the whole point. And to see if you're believing based on a faith, or if you're believing because you have good reason to believe. And I'm defending the fact that what I'm arguing and defending is the stuff the evidence does support. All right. The field model, whatever that means, just happens to work. So again, this working, I'm saying obviously it doesn't work. It's the whole point. The math doesn't work, okay? It's all lied about. They pretend they did experiments they never did. They pretend things actually happened that never could be proven to be happening. There's no evidence they actually happen that way. I mean, what's your definition of work? You know, it's just kind of silly. Again, this argument that somehow you're saying everything was invented based on a theory. No, it wasn't. It was invented like the Wright brothers through trial and error. And that's how 99% of invention takes place, is through trial and error. I mean, Edison's a great example. He had plenty of theory, but you know, he had to do it through experiment to find out the trick, what really worked. You know. All right. Let's see. The field model just happens to work and makes accurate predictions. So this is just more nonsense. Jamming makes accurate predictions as an explanation for the two-source interference experiment. So lots of alternative explanations accurately predict the outcome. Me arguing that the sun's true center of gravity precesses that the sun stays in one place, but the goop inside of it has an inconsistent density moment to moment. So the sun's actual center of gravity moves moment to moment. And that's why Mercury precesses, is because Mercury's extremely close to the sun relative to all the other planets. And that's why its orbit precesses. Now that's an accurate description in the sense that it would predict the fact that Mercury precesses. All I have to do is give the sun a certain rate of precession, and that will explain why Mercury precesses and the other planets don't. It works. So this argument that yours is the only model that works is, as I've demonstrated, a nonsense in so many cases. And it doesn't work. Okay, the model is plainly wrong. The two-wave model of the double-slit experiment functionally doesn't give you the right answer. It actually doesn't predict accurately. So again, this is just, the whole point is arguing that you're fibbing about what works and how well you predict. Again, I haven't seen Einstein's equations actually predict the exact amount of time dilation you'll see in a satellite, for example, the differential in the time between the surface of the Earth and the satellite's orbit based on the satellite's mass and velocity. I haven't seen anybody prove Einstein's theory correct. That it gets the exact right answer. All right. The field model happens to work and makes accurate predictions that are tested over and over again. So this is more lies. I mean, it's just an overt lie. So you haven't even done Eddington over and over again, beyond the margin of error, and with better technology, or from space even. And so these are just statements made, that it's been done over and over. Oh, the two-slit experiment's been done over and over again. Yeah, and it's been done with a fake view of what actually took place, with a bunch of statements about, it turns out right. No one ever actually measures anything. Nobody actually tests it to see how accurate the theory is. So again, this is just more talk. It's not evidence. It's just your statement. You've proven it. Well, the whole argument I'm making is your proof is really weak. And the fact that you won't admit that it's weak evidence just demonstrates that you're obviously the person with the huge bias boner. You're the one who can't get past your want for it to be true. All right. Tested over and over again, allowing us to build useful, it looks like really, tangible things. So again, more implication that somehow we couldn't invent the computer without quantum theory, which is horseshit. A big pile of stinky horseshit. Einstein essentially invented the transistor, when they had a conversation about the photoelectric effect. They were already there. They just hadn't put it in a little economical package yet. All right, and who did? Oh, that's right, people who just did trial and error. If you look up the blue LED and how it was perfected, you won't see theory in there. What you'll see in there is a lot of doping, trying different ways, okay, of synthesizing the materials, and not much theory. A lot of just trial and error. All right. Tangible things. Calling it shit science. It's shit science because first, the obvious. The evidence is weak, incredibly weak. You do not have a whole geological record to show me. You do not have fossils. You don't have DNA evidence. You don't have evidence from chemistry. You don't have evidence from all of this thing that you should have, okay? I mean, it's such a weak theory in the sense that you haven't written the Darwin book, okay? You haven't in any way chronicled and described all of these different forms of evidence that point in one direction. And as I'm pointing out, I can easily point in the other direction. I can easily point out that the radar experiment jamming can't be debunked as the answer, because it can be the answer. It's a viable answer. you're the ones keep declaring it's the only explanation is the photon had to go through both slits. It's the only explanation. That's your rhetoric. All right, that's your side that's crossing all these rational lines, and again, if you were just making errors, this wouldn't be a conversation. If you were just making some sort of honest mistake, but these are clearly dishonest exaggerations. Okay, this is hyperbole. You are exaggerating and propagandizing, and you're defending it. It's all over the place. I mean, these are professors in college, you know, who can't get the facts right. This isn't like just some Joe Smo on the street. And you're saying that's okay because it's propaganda for my side. It's what I want to be true. All right. Calling it shit science is only doing people disservice. No, I think it's what's called educating people. When people are lying, you should point it out. When people are being dishonest, you should point it out. When people are hypocrites, you should point it out. All right. Those are all honest things to do. And I would just argue from my perspective, looking at how you're doing it, okay, the people on your side, we see they're the ones cheating all over the place. How do the shills, you know, make their argument? You know, they make their argument from his hair isn't combed. He's, you know, he's living in a basement. That's how they're making their argument. So who's showing any integrity here? You're not, certainly not. So it's kind of just horseshit for you to be pointing your finger and calling something a disservice. Starting your comment with dude, okay, as the third word, okay, you're demonstrating that your attitude is the one that needs adjusting, asshole. All right. What you really should admit is you hate the conclusions and interpretations. I have admitted it overtly. I've explained numerous times how when I first heard this wave theory of photons, I was stunned that rational people could fall for this crap. I mean, I'm sitting there saying, I mean, what the fuck? These people build nuclear power plants and they think that's what's happening? You know, they're fucking pretty stupid. And as, you know, we sort of find out, there's reason to doubt that they really know that they've covered all their bases. Because it seems they make these critical mistakes. All right, anyway. As you admit, you hate the conclusions and interpretations of people of the popular field model. I say, if it was a model that had really good evidence and really, you know, solid, then I guess I wouldn't hate it. I'd accept it as, oh yeah, well, that's the truth. It's well established by evidence. But there is no evidence. So you have a theory of God, and I'd say, well, you know, I wouldn't mind there being a God. I mean, obviously, I don't want a God who's all upset about homosexuals and all this other bullshit. I'm totally disinterested in you know, a God who's a fucking lunatic. But I'm not disinterested in the idea that somebody had a plan and they really do know what's going on and they can fix it all and make it all seem rational. That it's okay to kill 10,000 turtles to make one sea turtle. You know, somehow that does make sense. I'd love to hear the, you know, the where it all makes sense part. So I'd be keenly interested in that. But that's not what you people are providing. Again, you're just propagandizing for a silly, wooey, nonsensical, mushy, crap, silly universe. And, you know, silliverse. And yes, I find it obnoxious because I don't think it does anything. You see what people need and what they deserve. People deserve better than this from smart people. Smart people should be telling people how to be, you know, how to deal with their reality. And instead they're selling them a bunch of hope and woo. All right. Unfortunately, remain a question of taste. Let's see. We'll find out with that popular model. That can indeed be argued with and will unfortunately remain a question of taste. So that's perfectly irrational. I mean, the fact that I find religion repugnant and that science is a religion, it's just faith-based, and that it's all pop culture bullshit, you know, that what succeeds is what people want to hear, Okay, so if you tell them the truth, fuck that. Tell them what they want to hear. Just like the news and everything else, engineer it for your audience. Don't bother doing any contextual truth thing. Okay, it's not about the truth. It's about what sells. Yeah, that's pretty disgusting. You seem intelligent. Why not bring your ideas to the table? It's exactly what I'm doing. In a more open-minded, well, why should I have an open mind? You know, again, what's the whole point? I'm making arguments, all right? I'm not supposed to, in some ways, I'm a lawyer, I'm an advocate, all right? And I'm advocating that the truth win, okay? Not a story, not my story, not their story, not any, no, that the truth win, that you fairly compare these interpretations. So this isn't about my problem interpreting the evidence, it's about your problem. You're the one who's got the bias. You're the one claiming that your theory is more evidenced because it's more popular, when the facts indicate that the evidence points just as well to my theory, and if they had to compete evenly, I can win. That's my contention. I can demonstrate that, no, I actually win the evidence war. And the evidence does indicate the universe gets simpler and more elemental, and it all goes down to 2 plus 2 plus 2. It covers more, it explains more, and it's simpler. So it's a big win. More open-minded approach without calling anyone stupid. Well, again, 99% of the videos don't have anything to do with calling anyone stupid. I'm drawing pictures of how something could work. I'm drawing the alternative theory and explaining why the alternative theory works. Or I'm drawing their theory. So again, this whining about the word stupid or some other accusation, well, clearly in this atmosphere, those words need to be used because there needs to be understood why these people are evil, why they're bad. So do you think you're going to change, let's say, people's attitude towards corporations if we say they're all love? They're all very nice, they're all, they're all well motivated, they're just broken in some silly way, where we know they're broken by motivation. They're broken by the corruption of their self-interest. And this physics is broken, okay, by the fact that it's all hype. It's all preposterous exaggeration about what they've established to be the truth. The universe is expanding. There was a Big Bang. They're making all these declarations about the truth, and they're marginally defendable statements. Some of them aren't defendable at all. Like I said, I think I've already proven wave theory is out of business. It doesn't work. It doesn't explain photons. The single slit experiment right there, clear indication that there's something wrong with your wave theory because sound and water don't do what light does. Double slit, the math actually doesn't work for 2 waves. I mean, whatever. So, fuck you. This is just whining because you're losing the argument. You can't produce the evidence. I can keep asking for it. Well, show me the link that proves it. Show me the link that proves electrons have a magnetic moment. Show me the link to the 2-slit experiment done correctly. Show me, your evidence. You say these things, you defend them as statements. Well, why don't you show the evidence? Because if you do provide a link, I'll be able to show how that's a pretty superficial analysis, right? Again, I'm going into this whole cyclotron thing, and they just keep saying that this is what's happening. Electrons are doing this, or protons are doing that, when they have absolutely no reason to believe they aren't just ions. They'll concede ions are in there, So, I mean, why should we believe that this is something other than a plasma they're manipulating? It's actually not a beam of electrons or a beam of protons. Can you explain the decisive piece of evidence? Can you show the decisive piece of evidence? I argue you can't. Okay. So I don't know what this possibly could mean. What is a coaxial plasma channel? I don't know. have no idea why that's on this video. I mean, coaxial is a Ken Wheeler word, okay? I mean, coaxial is a way of describing, things that have, I guess, two different modes, so they call it a coaxial cable because it has two modes. It has the interior shielded conductor in the center, and then the cable on the outside, and the two are kind of playing in reverse roles. One is exposed and one is secreted, from the universe. And I would argue that there aren't too many coaxial cables in the elemental function of the universe. So, yeah, I don't see how it could be a relevant piece of crud. He calls himself electrifying. See, I mean, this is, what are you going to say? These are the people, who, you use the word disservice. I mean, what would be the service you can do for these people? They clearly have overestimated their competence to engage in even conversation about how the world works because they have such mysterious and wacky notions of reality. They've been, Tesla-fied, into thinking because, icons into that whole thing, Alright, so, electric boom, capacitors, ran swearing, hilarious, I started crying. Well, anyway, yeah, there are some funny moments in my videos sometimes. Let's see. Yeah, it's too bad on the haha on the people that only watch 10 minutes of a video or 15 because, yeah, the good jokes were really late in that video. Yeah, but they were pretty funny. Anyway, thank you for your time and sharing. And then he's missing a space after the comment, which sort of ruins that comment. So, so Robin Evans, I don't know whether he attempted to comment with his regular account, which is called Robin Evans, but whatever. And then he has an account called What to Do, Pull the Pud. I mean, why would you, it's like, if you can't have a better screen name than that, what's the point? I mean, you don't have any other account with a better name than that? I think you have filters up. Well, I've said 400 times I don't, so I think you're stupid. But I mean, you haven't been on YouTube long enough to know that YouTube doesn't really care about these comments much, and they're not arranged very well. And sometimes they post, sometimes they don't. They post 4 hours later, and then they're gone for a while, and then you look on your other account, and they don't exist. YouTube is always fucking around with what's in your subscription box or what's in this or what's in that. You don't know that's how it works? Well, that's how it works for me. Because my comment disappears when I go incognito. Yeah, well, that's the whole point I'm making, is YouTube and Google serve the internet to you differently depending on who you are. And it's that simple. And, I'd argue that that's a sign of why corporations shouldn't be in control of the internet. Either that or the dirty trick agent, so he's Quintucca or something, shenanigans again. I didn't know he had power to make your comments disappear. So, it's kind of a dumb comment, frankly. Whatever. I don't know what to say. I'll say, generally speaking, if I post a comment somewhere, it's there most of the time. Sometimes it's gone, but, if it posts, it's there most of the time, mostly. But a lot of comments you can't even see unless you use the filter button. So, I mean, the catch is when you're reading the comments, there's an option, that gives you the option newest first. Click on newest first, because sometimes comments just don't appear unless you do that. Now, is that a YouTube bug or is that a YouTube feature? Does YouTube do that on purpose? I almost say they must. But whatever. But yeah, I'm removing this because it's just crap. I mean, frankly, I don't need to keep asserting this fact over and over again that I don't filter comments. I clearly read them. Now, ones that are just grossly obnoxious, I delete on sight. Okay, but, generally speaking, if somebody can barely make their argument in a barely civil manner, I'll respond to it. Shit. But I mean, why should I be something other than quite irritable when this is a sign of what's out there? This is what you have to actually attempt communication with. Oh, fuck. I mean, it really is doing nuclear physics in a frickin' infantorium or something. Some sort of fucking nursery school. Yuck. Alright, so on to N.D. Clark, I think. Yeah, so that's another, just a bare, it's a 60-second video, of the, and they all do them in different gases, which is funny. This one's in helium. But clearly always in a conducting gas. Sort of a giveaway. So anyway, he's blah 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 about apparently doesn't like cuss words or something, or this whole attitude that people should just get along, and they don't take any of these serious subjects at all seriously. Like, you should have civil dinner. Okay, let's say it's you and Hitler and Mussolini and all these these tyrants of the past, just come up with all kinds of dictators, Pol Pot, and all kinds of, lousy, rotten, stinking pieces of crud as human beings, and you're going to have some civil dinner conversation. Why would you bother doing that? And if you're going to argue politics, then it's going to get pretty heated pretty quickly, right? Because these people have really obnoxious views of reality, and they're brutally consequential. Okay, I mean, if you don't think animals suffer, then sure, you can sit there and say everything's okay. I can put them in concentration camps. I can torture them. I can put pigs in little pens, and they'll never ever see the sunlight. All right, ever, and I can just use them as meat-making machines, and I can do this horrible thing to a sentient, feeling animal, and you think it's okay. Now, that to me is a really substantial. Now, you will be offended if I say I can personally compare that to the Holocaust. I can compare that to great tragedies of that happened to human beings. I could compare it to Pompeii. I could compare it to some tsunami that damaged and hurt and ruined a bunch of people, as a bunch of suffering that's endured in the world, and it's a terrible thing. Now, you might find that offensive. I'd say too fucking bad, okay? That's just your ego problem, in my opinion. I have no evidence that your sensations are more grandiose than the sensations felt by a chimpanzee or an orangutan or anything else. That you're some sort of a special, feeling machine. I can make a rational argument that feelings have been around a long time evolutionarily. They were used for a very long time in evolution. Now, maybe you're a god bother and you still think humans were specially created and the aliens did, or some other horse shit. I don't have any evidence for that. And then I could also just point you to the evidence where many people will say their dog was their best friend in their life. That if it was their dog or their next door neighbor that had to be harmed, they would choose their next door neighbor, not their dog. So I'm just saying there's plenty of people who understand that humans aren't all that, they aren't all that, but those are core beliefs, okay? This is like you telling me you like to molest and murder children, and I'm supposed to say, oh, let's have a civil conversation. No, fuck you, okay? There's no civil conversation. I believe you're a cruel, sadistic, fucking sick dumbass. Okay, you're defending things that are just overtly going to cause harm and torture. And you're doing it for no other reason than baby talk. I mean, in defense of some fable you're going to tell everybody about how everything's all right. You've never died, and yet dying is worth it, and it's all okay, and don't worry about it. It's no big deal. I mean, months and months or even years of debilitation and suffering is just okay. You know it because you've done it and you've been there. Fuck you. And you're telling me this. You're telling me in this obnoxious way that I have to believe what you're saying because you're going to force, in a sense, consciousness to exist in that world. You're going to impose, okay? You're defending the imposition. You're not defending your personal opinion. You're defending imposing. All right? And so why the fuck should I sit there and have civil conversation? You're basically just saying, I'm going to go out and rape some bitches. And you're saying, I shouldn't do a goddamn thing about it. I shouldn't even hate you. Fuck you. Okay, that's retarded, jerk.
Something like it's the end of the world, like it's our last rope.
Yes, that's right. So there are things that are just, once you realize, this is disgusting. And you people keep committing this crime. You keep perpetuating the poverty. You keep perpetuating all the ills of our society. You just keep perpetuating them by making excuses for their existence. Oh, it's just part of the economic system, blah, 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 blah. Some sort of horse shit.
Because we identify with thought patterns and belief systems.
Well, whatever. Belief systems. They're not belief systems. They're overt theories and opinions. And the whole question is do your theories have any evidence to back them up? Do you have any good evidence to back up the crap you spew? And that's the argument. Ugh. Systems. No, it's more than, okay? It's obviously we all are robots, and we're all programmed by information, and that can be, we can show that programming, and we show programs that are logical and programs that are illogical, that don't have any evidence at their foundation, that are faith-based.
We identify, we make that part of our identity like it's an appendage.
Well, we don't do that. The understanding does that. Just as, like I said, I mean, much of my argument comes from my self-interest. I'm smart enough to understand that my consciousness arose here by no special circumstance. And it was no special circumstance that gave me the good fortune to be born in a civilized country rather than an uncivilized one. That I'm incredibly lucky in being a version of consciousness that had advantages. And that it would really suck that I'm going to wake up, essentially, a human will wake up, and have to play the game from much worse circumstances. I think the game sucks and I had every advantage. And I still understand how bad this game is. Right? I mean, from even worse circumstances, it's an impossible theory that this makes sense, that this is a great idea.
Like it's, it's an arm or a leg or something, like
Yeah, well, a pig is a little bit more. That's exactly right. Other sentient creatures on Earth being squished and squashed and tortured, and that's the fact, they're being tortured. All right, and again, if you're going to vote for this shit, then what am I supposed to perceive other than, God, I only wish you could get your fill of it, okay? I mean, if you think getting run over by a car is okay, it's something we should accept as sentient organisms being squished in the road, then I hope you're squished on the fucking road, shit for brain.
Cut that off, we're fucked, or we change something about that limb, there's going to be hell to pay, right?
Tangential mush, that couldn't possibly mean anything to anybody. That was so disconnected. Like we were going to forget our most basic understanding. My basic understanding is, Ned, okay, that I have two conditions, pleasant and unpleasant, okay? Those are the two sides of the fence I can fall on, and that's all I do, okay? I just ride that rail. Whoops, I'm in unpleasantness. Well, okay, I'm okay now. I'm, in unpleasantness. And I can logically understand that, when I really think about it, all there really is the whip. All there is the unpleasantness and the absence of it. So all I'm really fighting for is nothing. I'm fighting to stay out of the quicksand. I'm really not trying to go anywhere. I'm just trying to avoid quicksand.
Ask. I'm open to new thought patterns.
Whatever, blah, blah, blah. Who says this kind of shite? New thought patterns. What the fuck is that crap? okay, it's a competing theory that has to have evidence. You have to have reason to believe. Okay, so saying, oh, well, I'm open to evidence. Well, so am I, Ned. All right, and the fact is, though, is that your side doesn't provide any of that. It's just goo and mush. Okay, you don't have anything called evidence. You don't have anything to dispel my notion that, frankly, life is stupid, and the fact that I'm going to basically be committed to prison and the electric chair for being born. I mean, I'm going to be executed, okay? And did I commit a crime of some kind? Not that I know of, okay? So you have to demonstrate where somehow I deserve to be executed. And you're not going to be able to do that, frankly.
And I ask that other people be also open, not to my thought patterns, but to other people.
Whatever that even means. So again, this whole argument is just so petty and silly. You know, I'm going to accuse you of a closed mind. No, I'm sitting here begging you to show me some evidence for your crap. Okay, I'm sitting here making my argument against science. He's going to get to that soon. Sorry, I didn't realize that little extra philosophy in here that we don't need. But I mean, I'm asking you, prove it. Okay, you're going to make claims about how the universe works? Well, why don't you demonstrate some of them with a piece of fucking evidence? Where have you demonstrated I have a closed mind? You haven't demonstrated that or proven that. You've just declared, well, somehow I said it and you didn't believe it. What's wrong with you? I explained to you how God exists, and here's his Bible, and here's the stories in the Bible. Isn't that proof that it happened and that it's real? No, it's not. It's not even close, shithead.
Thoughts. There's a lot of conspiracies out there. That's a bunch of horse crap. There are a lot of crazy theories about life.
Right, and I'd say yours is among the most populous delusion that exists, is this dopey notion that it's all worth it. It doesn't matter if we have World War III or 4 or 10 or 20. Doesn't matter how many people get smushed in tornadoes. It doesn't matter how many people get drowned in the mud. Doesn't matter how many people... Yeah, it does. Okay, you keep thinking it's, hey, no matter what happens, it's all okay. Nothing. I can't describe a scenario to you that's bad enough. I really can't, right? Because no matter what I do, whatever happens in the world, if we have some tragedy and it horribly murders 1 billion people in a slow, horrible death, you'll just go, oh, isn't that just terrible? Oh, those poor people. But you'll just say it's all okay. Go ahead, do it some more. Let it happen again and again and again. It's all okay. Fuck you.
I don't think antinatalism is one of them. But there's a lot of goofy things going on in the world, and people just suck up to it, like the Q.
Yeah, and you seem like just one. You seem that's exactly what you are. You're just another sucker. Okay, another dupe who fell for a pile of crap and is just spewing it like, we're the greatest ball team in history. We won more pennants than anyone, and blah 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 blah. Yeah, well, yeah, but you also spent more money than anyone.
Non-horse shit. I mean, there's so many bullshit theories out there. Just people throw stuff out there just to see who's going to react to it. In Mendham, God, why am I mentioning him again? I do watch his videos. He repeats a lot of the same things, and I don't agree that science is all a bunch of silliness.
Yeah, and again, did I say all of science is silliness? No. But what I am sort of arguing is that for the theory of physics, yeah, it's all silliness since the 1900s. I mean, they're not even trying to get the right answers. I mean, dark matter. You think there's some integrity to the formation of this theory? This theory just was a God of the gaps answer. You know, we can't figure it out, so let's make some invisible man that committed the crime, because we can't come up with any rational reason there's mud on the floor.
I think the end of his last video was abhorrent in intelligence.
Oh, it's abhorrent. So you're already showing an attitude. Why are you upset? Abhorrent. Oh, that's strong language, isn't it? Ooh. You know.
Views. The way he views science in, spatial theory and
Spatial theory, he calls it. Bent space. Your theory is that there's some sort of bent thing called space-time that isn't a thing. It isn't a real thing. It's just some sort of weird thing. It theoretically can't even work in 3 dimensions. It's completely irrational, because then you have to call it convergent space or vacuum cleaner space. I mean, the whole thing is silly. And here you are defending it. And you don't know anything about it. And why are you defending it? Just because they told you so. I mean, you're just such a Borgy little succophant.
astronomy and all that. I mean, he thinks a lot of that, the curved space that Einstein talked about is stupid and silly because you can't put it into common sense terms.
You can't put it into any logical terms. So again, this isn't about common sense. It's about logic. There are 3 physical dimensions. You do understand that, right? And that you can't bend 3 physical dimensions. It doesn't work. There's no such thing. Okay? It's a concept that can't work in the actual physical universe we exist in. It's so silly. It's only a drawing for children. Okay? For small minds, this might work, that space is a bent fabric. But it doesn't work for anybody who has any technical knowledge.
Well, the common sense does break down at some point where it can't describe the most intricate parts of nature. I mean...
So again, that's your assessment. This isn't about describing the intricate parts of nature. This is about describing the simplest parts of nature. They can't get force matter right. They can't even get the speed of light, right? It's obviously the speed of all the forces. Why would you call the speed of... It's like calling America Joeville. I mean, would that make any sense? Okay, that we all have to be, I'm a Joe. I live in Joe. I mean, it's so disconnected from how it should be even described that, that they can't even get these simple things right. Plus and minus are misidentified, and they have whole mathematical theories that are constructed wrong to correct for this wrongness in the identification of the excess of electrons versus the deficit of electrons. Simple things like that they didn't even fix, and then they talk about how much integrity their math has when their math is basically doing a reversal trick to get over the fact that it's misidentified which side has more electrons.
You have to leave math to math, and you have to...
Whatever. See, just more crap. Math is just a language. It's a way of describing something, okay? The equal signs means just like what we can do with a balance and a scale. We can understand the equation is just drawing the scale for us and saying this equals that. And if I add this or I divide by that. These concepts are completely understandable in terms of set theory and all that kind of stuff, and can be understood in you can move the abstraction into real terms. It doesn't have to be just math. Math can be described and analogized to reality. I can make a scale out of a teeter-totter or something. I can balance a board on a fulcrum and show you equals. Okay? I don't have to just keep it as a mathematical formula. I can make you understand what the math is doing by showing you what it's physically doing. I can give you a physical example of what the equation is doing. I mean, when I was in school in a retarded state, Louisiana, got a terrible education, but the fact is they had a little toy, right? And the numbers had weight. Okay, so the numbers were little plastic numbers, and they each weighed a little, proportionally. The 4 weighed 4 times as much as the 1. And they just could put the numbers on the 2 sides of the scale physically, and you could understand the weight. You could understand that 4 is 4 ones, and 4 is 2 twos. I mean, So this stupid idea that math is some sacred little place over here where you only do this sacred language, it isn't. It certainly doesn't have to be. And it certainly doesn't change the fact that what you're really arguing is what you could even draw it. You can draw the math. You can draw the inverse square law. You can draw all of this stuff.
There's some things in science that are not really, you can't break down into common sense.
Okay, so again, it's all about common sense. No, it's not about any common sense. If it was common sense, then I wouldn't have to argue it, would I? Because everybody would already have it. Okay, so it's clearly not common sense. But what the argument is that there are certain facts that are indicated by evidence, and the argument is you're claiming the evidence indicates the universe gets tricky as you go down, and my argument is no, the evidence pretty decisively points to the fact that the universe gets simpler as you go down.
Things just don't work that way.
Says you, and that's all that is. Things just don't work that way because I say so, and because I'm part of the club that says we proved it, and you never proved it.
Everything isn't simple.
Says you. So that's the argument, right? I mean, Feynman made it pretty clear. Maybe it is just a big checkerboard, really simple rules. It's just that it's so goddamn big, that we're lost in the forest, okay? It's just made out of trees, but it's still, we're lost in it because there's just too many fucking trees. We can't figure it out because there's too many fucking trees in our way. There's too much simplicity, okay, and therefore we're drowning in the simplicity.
Everything isn't totally understandable.
So says you. Again, these are claims for which I'm arguing there's no evidence. You have absolutely no good reason to believe it's ununderstandable. No, I'm saying, no, it is understandable. The mechanisms are reliable. We understand atoms to a large degree. We understand how they connect to each other and they're sharing electrons and all this kind of stuff. So why are you saying it's ununderstandable when there's every indication that we can understand it?
By every human on Earth. I don't believe that. Every
human. Well, who was even arguing that every human could understand anything when we know some humans physically can't? But regardless, it is understandable in the sense that, frankly, as even Einstein has said, if you really know something, you can explain it to a 5-year-old, 7-year-old anyway.
And I don't believe that calling everybody that doesn't think like you an asshole.
Oh, this is just such horseshit. Obviously, that's not who I'm calling an asshole. I'm calling a bunch of hypocrites assholes. Hypocrites who sit there and go out and just mock the rotten fruit. They don't take on the challenge of what's really... they show no courage in defending the truth. They just show courage in attacking lunatics and crazy people and people who are broken. And they're, showing how they're great Olympic champions when they're champions for nothing, okay? They're beating up retards. I call them assholes. Propagandists are assholes, frankly, Ned. And you're behaving like an asshole when you sit there and make declarations for which you don't have any evidence.
All is necessary. Sorry, just don't. You can disagree with someone without going off the deep end and hollering their...
So that's the deep end, right? Pushing them down the stairs, that's not the deep end. Or something violent, getting in their face. I don't get in anybody's face, Ned. All right, I don't invade their privacy. Your side's doing that, okay? The people who defend your argument are the ones who sit there and try to cheat all the time. All right? I'm not out there doxing anybody. I'm not out there harassing anybody. I'm not forcing anybody to watch my videos. I'm not doing any of that, jackass. I'm really not. I'm not stepping into your house and getting right in your face and doing anything. Okay? So again, this idea that somehow I've crossed some sort of civil line is bullshit. I have a right to call a spade, okay? I think you're an ignorant asshole. It is my perception. I think, okay, you've spent your whole life just being a follower and getting along, and you think that's winning. I won because I played this stupid game that's just made out of bullshit. It's just made out of do what they require you to do, say what they require you to say. Fuck that, is what I'm saying.
They're all assholes and stupid and ignorant and all that. I mean, to me, that's petty, and
That's not the argument. Clearly, when I say the word asshole, it's always connected to an argument about there's the ass and there's the hole. I mean, I'm showing you the asshole. I'm not saying Google sucks and just leaving it that, right? I'm pointing out how this is how they lied, okay, for 2 years. They drove everybody out of business, just like William Randolph Hearst. They have exactly the same ethics. You know, he basically said, look, I can lose $2 million for 100 years. I have enough money to lose $2 million a year for 100 years. Go ahead and compete with me. All right, I'm going to open a business, and I can lose $2 million a year at my business. Go ahead and try to compete with me. I can have prices that are so low my business loses $2 million a year. How are you going to compete with me? He saw that clear road to winning, and he took it. And that's the point, is that anyone who takes that road is a shithead and an asshole. And Google took that road.
it shows a mental dysfunction if you must jump everybody's bones for disagreeing with you.
So this is more bullshit, this hyper, excessive, insane exaggeration. I'm not allowed to be, to find you of low character and beneath contempt because you think it's perfectly fine to torture animals. Well, I don't think it's perfectly fine. I think it's actual, terrible, awful torture. You're a horrible person, Ned. You're causing torture. You're defending torture. Why the fuck should I have some kind of civil conversation with you? You suck, buddy. Period. You're a fucking menace. I mean, if it was all harmless, if all this crap you were saying about how life is good, if all you were doing it for is to reinforce your own silly notions, and that's as far as it goes, fine. But you're making arguments to other people implying that, no, it's okay to feel positive. It's okay to play this game, this tic-tac-toe game. The torture, ignore the blood, ignore the guts. That's just propaganda. That's just lies by these sensitive people. That's just bullshit. That doesn't really happen. It's all okay. We're having fun. And it's not even like you look like you're having fun. You know, you're just having, no, we're playing Borg. We're playing Borg. And Borg is fun to play. Let's all play Borg. Yeah, and I'm not supposed to find you offensive and dangerous and horrible? Of course I do, shithead. And of course I'm going to make an aggressive argument that people don't fall for this crap. Don't buy these pontificators. Don't sit there and say, oh, well, Ned looks like he has a fancy shirt. He might know what he's talking about. No, don't fall for that shit. Understand reality, okay? And that takes a little bit of work, frankly. All right? I mean, understand that there are fossils, you know, that'll show you what dinosaurs look like and how life was different on this planet, and it evolved into something that it is now. Mostly because we sunk carbon into the ground. The dinosaurs did. And by sinking a lot of carbon, okay, they made the world a colder place, and little squigglies like us ended up succeeding.
You can disagree without getting hostile.
Again, if nothing was at stake, that's all just fine. You think all of these conversations are academic. They are not academic. The future is in the balance. The welfare of trillions or zillions of sentient organisms is sitting there in the balance, and you're talking like it's just an academic conversation. No, it's fucking not. We're not arguing about what, shape of shoe is preferable. What color you should paint your wall. This isn't some trivial conversation, you stupid fuck. The fact that it's trivial to you, okay, that's the truth. The fact that you don't give a fuck. Because you don't have any horse in this race, so you don't give a fuck about the rules of the race or any of this shit. You're just saying it's just horses. Who cares? They don't mean anything to you.
I've gotten hostile and mad and angry and said nasty things to people too. So I'm not sitting on a pedestal.
Yes, you are, you fucking hypocrite. You just did it. You just give people this whole lecture about how they aren't allowed to do what you do. So you're just such a overtly pointing out your hypocrisy. When somebody offends my feathers, they called my kid ugly, or that one of my chickens is got a crookedy head, I get really upset. I think he has chickens.
Saying I've never done those things, but it appears that every time he turns the camera on, that's what he's going.
So another fucking lie, another piece of exaggerated crap propagandizing. So again, 99% of the hours of content on my physics channel cannot be described that way. And even on the other channel, that's not what 99% of the content is. 99% of the content is making some sort of appeal for people to understand what evolution means and what the consequences of it are, and that we live in a universe that's mechanical, and that we are in fact just programmed robots. We are just puking what we were fed, and just different shapes and sizes of bullshit. We're just remixing the ingredients, and we're not remixing it in any other way than exactly how the universe told us how to stir it. There's no us in any of this crap. There's just machines, just silly Coke machines, pretentiously walking around thinking I'm specially special and I'm having specially special thoughts. No, you're just a programmed machine.
After is to be, bashing at somebody, I just don't see it as necessary.
I don't see it as accurate, and it's pretty goddamn offensive, so fuck you for that.
That's my thoughts on it.
I'd say they were very weakly evidenced and poorly articulated and badly argued.
You can disagree or agree.
Yeah, and I'll do it with an argument, with evidence. So I think I provided some evidence of his hypocrisy. He basically acknowledged, oh yeah, I get pissed off, but that's about stuff that I think's important. You're not allowed to think something else is important. And that's all he basically said. I know what's important. You don't.
Peace.
Yeah, again, more puff rhetoric. So you be the judge. Who's telling you the truth? The people who say peace. They can't even come up with a rational way of saying, well, it's the end of the video. Wish, wish, hope, hope, but that ain't going to do you any good. Get what you deserve. Because that's either a good thing or a bad thing, right? I hope you get exactly what you deserve. Okay, whatever you feed, I hope exactly the same thing eats your ass. Alright. Oh, that was just horrible. But anyway, so another curious thing was Veritasium. So, it's off-subject day, so I might as well indulge in a little off-subject. Really strange video, is success luck or hard work? So he's, it's not a bad video in the sense that it's a philosophy video in some ways, but in a way it's just a mechanical reality. Obviously some of these statistics can be played with and whatnot, and how people self-describe isn't really good evidence of anything. But it's this whole argument that, I've sort of made that, all this crap about winners and losers is just really stupid because tiny little things make the difference. Again, there's a ton of people who would have been Olympic champions, and unfortunately they twisted their ankle, when they were 7 or something, and it's never good enough and they could never be an Olympic champion. It's that kind of silly changes in destiny, that tiny little events fuck people up. And so that any competition we win, the fact is there could be somebody who would be better at it. I've made points like you always have to kind of think the person you're in a relationship with, if you didn't come along, did you do them better or did you do them worse? I mean, would they have been better off without you and instead being Jimmy's wife or something? This whole idea that destiny is so fudgy and mushy and that we don't have very many tools to know exactly what the right thing to do is, and that's why we have to be really careful about our probabilities, understanding what's probabilistically going to solve a problem or what's economical. The whole point that you can spend $1 million to fix one broken child. The fact is that $1 million could have fixed a whole bunch of broken kids in some other place in the world, and that's just a fact. I mean, it's not some unknown thing. It's just a fact, and that we're just letting emotion decide what the right answer is, rather than letting reason decide what the right plan is, and that's the real liability. But the gross hypocrisy of this guy, right? So he's basically pointing out how, yes, success, if you don't have that 5% of luck, okay, your hard work doesn't mean anything if you don't get lucky. Even silly things like hockey players being, mostly having birthdays after January, close to the winter, just because of that cutoff point. I was part of that because I had a very late, November birthday. So I ran into some of that kind of stuff, being this youngest, smallest kid in the class kind of scenario, and how that's not very good for your your maturation. It does wear on your ego quite a bit, and that all these things are part of what turns you into the person you're going to end up being, and whether you're have the aggressiveness to go on. But that's the whole point, is that the whole lesson learned here is that this is all such bullshit. He even has a little cartoon drawing in here of kids, of little stick figures, going through the gauntlet and being wiped out by silly things like, a tree falls or this happens. And, the irony is then he shows his 3 kids, and it's really quite funny. So we just play this little gauntlet part.
Are talented and hardworking, but they have also been luckier than most. And like most
banana
of us,
peels,
they don't realize just how lucky they are.
Little distractions, UFO.
Reality. They're kind of living in a form of survivor bias. All these leaders have worked hard and
right. So this is like the Neds, okay? They didn't end up with a debilitating disease and this and that and this, and so life seems so much easier. Yeah, it's a good deal. I don't mind this deal at all. Well, that's because you're the one that didn't have to be squished. The agony of defeat will be a lot more people than the ones that get to win. And we have all this emphasis on the winners and all of this. Let's completely ignore those broken, bloody bodies. Let's ignore, like for professional football, right? We know we paralyze kids to have it. I mean, is it really worth paralyzing kids? I mean, it doesn't seem to me to make much sense that we could watch something else, at some other TV show that didn't paralyze kids, right? They worry about a movie that now and then kills somebody, to make hundreds of $1 million movie, and now and then one of them dies. Well, compared to paralyzing kids, so it's okay to paralyze kids for a silly entertainment. I mean, and it is incredibly silly, right? I mean, it's kicking a ball back and forth, it's throwing a ball back and forth, running back and forth on a field with a ball, and having, big fat people fall on you. What the fuck? It's so silly. And yet we'll paralyze kids for it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. And so anyway, this is just kind of funny because, okay, what is this Veritasium guy? How much does he actually know what he knows? I mean, obviously he doesn't take any of it to heart, because he's basically said to his 3 kids, yeah, I'm going to fuck you up like this too. I'm going to force you to run a silly race where you're more likely to be the loser, frankly. That's the way it's going to work out. There's only going to be 11 astronauts, okay, a year, or whatever, however often they have the astronaut class graduation. And you're going to compete with 1 million other people, and you're going to probably just be one of the losers. And your life's going to be made out of an awful lot of defeat and very little victory. And, you might even be horribly brutalized by life. That's okay. Too bad, huh? Yeah, but that's what I've sentenced you to. Go at it. Have fun. I personally got lucky. I did get a link from a Vsauce channel. I did get these right connections, and I fell into a lot of circumstances that made it possible for me to make a living doing this mush and blah 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 blah. And but he doesn't seem, he's talking like he learned a lesson, but maybe not. Maybe he doesn't even understand what he's actually demonstrating to be a fact. Because why the hell, okay, again, what the hell are you thinking when you're having kids? You're basically saying to them, well, yes, I've convicted you of a really horrible crime and I will execute you. You will be executed, okay, against your will. And we're not going to do it quickly, like with an electric chair or, firing squad or any of that stuff. And we're not going to give you a party beforehand or any of that shit. You're not going to get a single consideration. You're going to get brutally executed. All right, so that's one thing I've given you. It's my wonderful gift to you. And I've also given you this gauntlet you have to run. And especially now in the world we see now, I mean, the gauntlet is so sloppy and so messy. There's so many useless people and so many people distracted by so much of this virtual world that offers them all this candy, and video games, for example, and they get lost in, living fake lives in fake universes and not having any skills that make them useful to the rest of the world, to finance their existence even. I mean, terribly dysfunctional. Every prospect, the future does not look good. It looks kind of grim. Veritasium has been part of the generation that has borrowed more money on a credit card than ever. I mean, he's lived from the day he was born. Okay, at least I was born before deficit spending was insane. And he's lived through every year of his life, living on the future. Borrowing their welfare, forcing them to pay the bills. And those bills are all coming due, and the use of all the fossil fuels and the whole thing, and yet he has 3 kids. What fucking sense does it make? No sense. So anyway, sorry for the philosophy video, but it'll happen now and then. It's no big deal. You'll get over it. And we'll attempt to get back to physics. And subjects, the simulation is the guy's working on it again, so that's good, and I think it's close to something very interesting, but no point in promising, because I don't want to put any pressure, and it'll get there when it gets there, and that's okay. It's theoretically understandable, and that's all that really matters. It's all that should matter to people with any intelligence. It's 2 + 2 + 2. It's pretty simple. So, I mean, you really should be able to follow along without, a movie. You shouldn't need a movie to understand the book. And if you do need it, that's a sign that you're probably not going to get enough. You're going to be like Veritasium. You're going to draw the picture and then not even get what the picture's saying. Too stupid.